Good morning. It's Jim Vanderwall with Fraser Basin Council. We're going to get started in a minute here for our webinar today on the Green Shores program. We're just going to give people another minute to trickle in. For those of you that are already in, you should be able to access the audio either on your computer or through the 1-800 number that you see at the bottom of the screen. If you're having any technical issues, feel free to send an email to my colleague Elena Chia at fraserbasin@gmail.com. That's fraserbasin@gmail.com, or use the chat or question function to ask questions. So we'll get started in just a minute. So good morning, it's Jim Vanderwall with the Fraser Basin Council. Welcome to our BC Regional Adaptation Collaborative webinar this morning. Our topic today is the Green Shores program, and Green Shores 101 for Busy Professionals is the title. Thanks for joining us. Just a little bit about, in terms of introduction, the BC Regional Adaptation Collaborative. Many of you probably have visited our website, the retooling.ca website, which has a number of climate adaptation related resources. So our goal is to try and support local governments and First Nations and businesses as they try to grapple with what the future climate means for their plans and operations. And we also, through events like today, our webinar, as well as in-person workshops, one-on-one support where we can do that, and also the Retooling for Climate Change website. Please also, if you haven't done that already, sign up for our email list newsletter there, so you get information as funding programs come out or events are available. As I mentioned earlier, we're just a few webinar logistics. We're keeping the audio muted because we've got lots of people on the line today who are interested in this topic, so that you can hear our speaker. If you would like to ask questions, you can use the question feature in the control panel. So you can do that at any time during the presentation. We will come to your questions at the end and moderate those questions and read them out. As mentioned earlier, any technical difficulties, send an email to fraserbasin@gmail.com. Just wanted to mention a few upcoming events that may be of interest. The first you may have seen is a follow-up webinar to this one around using 3D modeling for Green Shores projects. So featuring some work that Dr. Nathan Vadeboncourt has been involved in developing modeling that helps to design and implement and evaluate Green Shores projects. So it should be interesting on March the 7th. There is a handout as well. If you look in the control panel, you can download a handout with some more information and the link to register. As well, for those that are in Northeast BC or in that, or close, have an interest in that region, on March 15th in Fort St. John, we will have a workshop on floods and droughts and tackling wild weather. So please, as well, there's a handout that you can access if you're interested in that event. So before we get to our presentation here, just also wanted to mention that this event is supported financially by the Natural Resources Canada Adaptation Platform program, as well as the BC Ministry of Environment and the Climate Action Secretariat. We had hoped to have one of the staff from Climate Action Secretariat, Johanna Wolf, join us today, but she's not well, so DG is going to carry the full presentation. So our speaker today is DG Blair, who is the Executive Director of the Stewardship Centre for BC. As Executive Director of the Stewardship Centre for BC since 2010, DG provides leadership and facilitation of collaborative stewardship initiatives with partners in government, industry, and NGOs. And she's responsible for managing the Stewardship Centre's BC Stewardship Centre for BC's Green Shores Species at Risk Primer and Stewardship Practices demonstration projects. And DG also provides technical expertise in environmental issues, education, outreach, and evaluation for many of the center's projects. Now, before we go to our, I'll switch controls in just a minute to DG, but before we do that, I'd just like to do a little poll here to see what kinds of organizations we have on this webinar. So if you could just let us know what type of organization you're with, whether it's local government, provincial, federal government, business or consulting, academics, or non-government. Okay, great, and we'll just share the results with you here. So as you can see, lots of folks from local governments or First Nations, as well as a number involved in business or consulting. So that's helpful for us to know who we're speaking with here today. What I'm going to do at this time is I'm just going to switch controls over to DG. So bear with us for just a minute.
And
great, we can see your screen, DG, so perfect. Take it away.
Excellent, great, thanks. Well, thanks so much for the opportunity to join you all here today. As Jim mentioned, my name is DG Blair, and I'm Executive Director of the Stewardship Centre for BC, and I'm going to carry on and hopefully cover Johanna's slides effectively, so bear with me. I'd like to just start by saying a little bit on the Stewardship Centre's mission, for those of you who are not familiar with the Centre. And basically what we do is look at our mission is to strengthen ecological stewardship. And we have a variety of programs and resources working in a collaborative way with many partners, including the Fraser Basin Council. If you haven't been to our website, you can go and peruse all the different things that we offered, and that's stewardshipcenterbc.ca. So one of our keystone programs is Green Shores. It started way back originally, or I guess the concept started in 2003 with the publication of our guide called Coastal Shore Stewardship. And it was probably the first time that the concepts of how do we be good shore stewards, particularly in the marine environment, and there were a number of workshops that were held. And the feedback was, we love the concepts, but how do we actually incentivize more of these practices happening on the ground? And we need more specific guidance. And from there, the idea of the Green Shores program and the development of credit and rating systems was born. So that was that, and the first guide came out in 2010. So it took a little while for things to move ahead. But basically, Green Shores is a rigorous standard based on those concepts from coastal shore stewardship, and it's based on these 4 guiding principles. The first is to preserve or restore physical processes, that is to say the natural actions of water and sediment as they move along the shore, and that movement helps to maintain healthy shorelines. The second is to maintain or enhance habitat diversity and function. So we want that habitat function and diversity to, if it's not in good shape, to be able to restore it or to maintain it whenever we're doing any works along the shore. Also, we want to reduce or prevent pollutants from entering the aquatic environment and avoid or reduce those cumulative impacts that can add up to large impacts. And this is particularly relevant to residential properties, because a lot of residential properties along the shore are very, they're small footprint, but cumulatively they add up to a big impact. Green Shores is a science-based set of standards. The designs that are promoted within the Green Shores credit and rating system dissipate wave energy, reduce storm surge, and lessen flooding. As I mentioned, looking at those principles, we are really looking at restoring habitats, coastal ecology and sediment transport, as well as creating natural areas. And basically, it offers a resilient approach to sea level rise and climate change adaptation. The photographs on the bottom are taken in the same storm conditions, about 6 kilometers apart on Vancouver Island. And you'll see on the photo on the left that hardened shoreline. You can just see how those waves impact that shore. Whereas in the same conditions, we have our natural shoreline. This is a reconstructed shore. And you can see how that wave energy is just dissipated. Moving on, looking at the issue of sea level rise, I think I'm sure most of you have seen either a graph, this one, or something similar. And the main message that we wanted to pass along is that with sea level rise, we're not talking if sea level rise, but when. And so these sorts of projections, if we look on our slide, the circle to the right, anywhere from low, medium to high. And right now, we're working off of a 1 meter by 2100 in terms of our planning allowance in that 100-year planning scope. You can see those 2 red dots in the middle. But the range, when we look at the range of predictions, indications seem to be pointing to the steeper curve, or let's say from the medium up to the high, rather than something less than that. If you're not familiar with the Sea Level Rise Adaptation Primer, it's a great resource and is something you should definitely take a look at, and it does cover a lot of the topics here that we're just touching on in this slide presentation. In terms of how do we adapt to sea level rise, again, many of you are probably familiar with the 4 quadrants. Avoid, and that basically planning to prevent those developments that would be in flood-prone areas. That's certainly something that should be considered. But in a lot of cases, we've got already infrastructure, homes, buildings in areas that are going to be impacted by sea level rise, and we need to look at those other 3 quadrants and could be accommodate. So in other words, we change activities or the infrastructure to improve the resilience or the ability to accommodate that sea level rise. We can work at protecting, and there are different options for protecting those locations, and then retreat. So limit use of structural protection, and eventually relocate whatever it was in the area that was prone to or in sea level rise. We just wanted to note that in those 4 quadrants, Green Shores really suits the accommodate and protect element, so that we use natural sources of protection rather than hard armoring. And it also can help in the retreat option for incremental, ecologically resilient plans and construction in terms of options in that way. So what might that look like in terms of a green shore? What does it look like? And so this scale sort of gives the hard to soft spectrum. That top photograph, what we call the natural, is basically a natural beach, and with Green Shores we try to encourage, just if it's working, keep it that way, keep that natural shoreline. However, sometimes, particularly when we're looking at adapting to sea level rise and climate change, we need to have something a little bit more robust, and we move to the soft and hybrid range of things. So the beach that is the next slide down, or the next photo down from the top one, the beach Nourishment, it uses a combination of material that is added. So we nourish the beach, and then we stabilize it with logs or other structural elements. The next one down is hybrid, where there can be, for example, there's a combination of a log crib and some beach nourishment and some woody material added to help dissipate that wave energy, and that is also can be considered Green Shores type approach. And then finally, the structural elements, that hard bulkhead can be, in this case, it's a wooden bulkhead, can be concrete. And generally speaking, we do not encourage that in the Green Shores approach. So let's take a look quickly at the effects of shoreline hardening. And this was something, you know, back in the day, shoreline hardening was looked at as a best practice. And but however, the implications of what happens when we harden a shoreline weren't fully considered. And in some cases, a hardened shore is really the only option. But there are consequences. If we have a gentle slope and a beach, when we look at that wave breaking, or the red arrow on the left, the wave breaking, it breaks basically at the same height as it comes into the natural shore. And the sand and sediment, the rock movement, as it goes up that sloped shoreline, basically dissipates the energy so that you have a 1-to-1 ratio. When we move to a hardened shore, we lose that ability of that shore to help dissipate that energy, so that wave comes in, hits that wall, and then goes straight up for a 5 to 10 times the wave height. And that has consequences, because then we have that spray overtopping and flooding as that water moves inland. We also have scouring at the base of the wall unless there's additional sediment supply. And that further increases the wave height, because we don't have that those rocks, and also less habitat available to grow marine vegetation and the like to help dissipate those seagrasses, to help dissipate that wave energy. So that is one of the things that really happens with those hardened walls. In terms of cumulative impacts with shoreline hardening, although this is an example from the U.S., basically the rate of shoreline hardening has been increasing. I'm happy to say that they've gotten to a point now where they're starting to reduce, or at least really slow down the trend. But one of the main concerns is that with sea level rise and climate change, there will be a tendency to consider hardening of our shorelines as a default option unless we explore other options. And obviously with the hardened shoreline, we're decreasing our ability to be resilient to increased sea level rise, and also we are definitely impacting the habitat values along the shore. So I wanted to just give you, before we move too much further, an example of a recent beach nourishment project on Vancouver Island, and this is in Rathtreva Provincial Park. You'll see the before photographs on the left, and in the middle, it's your standard bulkhead. And then the completed project, which I believe was completed in just this past December, they brought in, they have the structural elements with the logs, buried logs, and then beach nourishment. And as you can see, the beach seems to be functioning very well. It's still early days, but it's functioning well, and it looks really like a completely natural beach. So I get to the point of why, turn to why Green Shores, and what does Green Shores actually look like. And I think Green Shores was really born out of the response. Instead of having a shoreline replaced by wall, not because anyone decided that this should happen, but because no one decided that it should not happen. And I think we've taken the perspective that we are going to decide that it does not necessarily need to happen, and we can do something about it. So in order to figure out what to do and how to move Green Shores forward, we did a a BC pilot. And we spoke with property owners and developers, professionals, as well as local governments to find out about what were the challenges and motivations to actually adopt a Green Shores approach rather than looking at conventional hard armoring as an approach to maintaining healthy shorelines and adapting to sea level rise and climate change. And from the property owners and developers' perspective, their challenges were they were very concerned about the costs and that doing Green Shores would be more costly than a conventional approach. And generally, they didn't know that there were any other options. The intuitive response is, let's put in a rock wall. And I'll get to a little bit about the costs in a moment. And in terms of the motivators, generally speaking, they really wanted to maintain or enhance ecosystem health, but at the same time reducing risks to their property. From the professionals' perspective, there was a lack of familiarity what Green Shores was all about and how it could be a useful option. But they also saw that it might be profitable to actually embrace Green Shores, and also it met with many of their values in terms of what they wanted to do as professionals working along the shore for shoreline projects. From the local government perspective, there are many competing interests for limited fiscal and human resources. In terms of a motivator, Green Shores really fits in well with climate change adaptation planning and shoreline asset management. So from there, we've expanded the program components, and certainly the fundamental backbone of Green Shores is all about these credit and ratings guides. And so this is the guidance material that really can help incentivize and more best practices going into shoreline projects. The Green Shores for Coastal Development is applied to municipal parks, mixed-use residential, institutional shoreline properties. Actually, I should just say parks, not just municipal parks. And Green Shores for Homes is for residential shoreline properties. Both are built on that similar format to Built Green and LEED, using a credit and rating systems as a way to develop properties in a shore-friendly way. We also have completed a number of different research reports and development of resources to help support the program. I mentioned the cost factor. Our report, 2014 report called Greening Shorelines to Enhance Resilience, we basically contracted SNC Lavalin to take a look, to complete a study comparing two soft approaches or Green Shores approaches versus a conventional hard approach in 3 different case scenarios, taking a look at can both approaches address 1 meter sea level rise, what are the cost comparisons, and what are the impacts on ecological resilience. And if you haven't had a chance to look at that report, it's quite interesting. As a matter of fact, I went to a workshop recently where somebody from the U.S. Environmental Defense Fund, who works on shorelines down there, waved the report and said, "This is my new favorite report because it's very specific." And the results were that Green Shores approaches, I'll talk a little bit, are less costly. They can meet the 1 meter of sea level rise and offer improved ecological resilience. We also have a 2016 report on shoreline management policies and bylaws, which will be very helpful for local governments who are interested in implementing. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can take a look at this document and use what you can there. We've established a Green Shores local government group, and that is where we supply some support for local governments who wish to implement it, because we recognize education is a key part of it, training is a key part of it, support for this next bullet, shoreline project certification. So we need to have some projects that enroll, and we have meet that Green Shores standard. And then finally, the education and training. That came up really clearly that we need to host training workshops, webinars, and do general outreach to expand awareness. And I'll touch on the training a little bit farther on in the presentation. In terms of the process, how do we, if you are interested in using the credit and ratings guides, how do we move a project through that process? It's basically 3 stages. The first is to enroll and initiate with Green Shores that you want to have a shoreline project that is going to meet that Green Shores standard. In Washington State, you contact Nicole Fagan. She's the coordinator down there. In BC, you contact myself at the Stewardship Centre. The second is you, after receiving the guides and the working templates, you actually use the guidance material provided to try to maximize the number of credits your project will receive. The more best practices you put into that project, the more points you'll get and the higher your rating will be. And as you're having your design and your construction, you're collecting documentation required for the verification process along the way, the before, before, during, and after photographs, etc. And then finally, once the project is completed, you submit the documentation, we send out a verifier, and then you'll be like those happy people on the right-hand side of the screen, and you'll have your plaque and your certificate. So now I want to dive into, so we have gone over the process. I want to dive a little bit into what the 2 credit and rating systems are about, and just give you a couple of examples as to the specificity that you get in this guidance material. So first is Green Shores for Homes. This, as I mentioned, was released in December 2015 after a 5-year development process and piloting process. It is applicable to both, it was developed for both Washington State and British Columbia, a great cross-border initiative. It looks specifically at residential properties in both freshwater lake environments as well as marine shorelines. The intention of the credit format and the points are intended to encourage incremental improvements. So for example, if there's a property with a bulkhead along the entire property, you get points for not only, it's not all or nothing, you don't have to remove the whole thing, you get some points for removing a percentage. So in the greater the percentage, the more points. So we're trying to encourage that improvement in an incremental way. And it is based, needless to say, on the 4 guiding principles. Green Shores for Homes has 4 application requirements, and generally speaking, these are the things that are required if you need to get a permit for a shoreline project. We tried to make it not additional to what you would already need to be doing for any sort of shoreline project. So an existing conditions plan, the site design plan, environmental management plan, and obviously critical or sensitive habitat needs to be identified and put on those plans. Then we have 4 credit categories, and if you hearken back to those guiding principles, the shoreline processes and shoreline habitats relate to those first guiding principles. And so we have credit categories, and then we have a variety of points. And you'll see there's a lot of points possible, and the reason for that is we have made it so that this can be applicable to a variety of projects, and some of the points and some of the credits, pardon me, are mutually exclusive. So you have a variety, and so there's a lot of credits, and if you don't happen to have a bulkhead on your property, obviously you can't get a credit for removing it, for example. So diving in a little bit more specific, I did want to point out, in terms of, this is an example of credit 2.4, there's specific information. So for example, where woody material is already along that shoreline, you're going to maintain or do not disturb 80% of that existing woody material, where after we know that it's in 50% of that shoreline. And then you get 3 points. But for example, if there is no woody material or it's diminished, you've got a reference beach, then you're going to add woody material. And then if you look at it, you get 1 point for 10% that is added to a maximum of 3 points. So different design options offer different points. Ultimately, If you've gotten enough points, you can have 2 pilot rating levels, and we're still working on tweaking that. That's why it's pilot. It's just over a year out, so we're working on that. And but I wanted to point out that we really are stressing the shoreline habitat and shoreline process points, and 50% need to come from there. So let's dive into now Green Shores for Coastal Development. So that is applicable to parks, and I will have to update this slide because it's not just municipal parks, mixed-use residential, commercial, or institutional shorelines. It right now is focused on marine shorelines, but we have heard that, particularly in the area of parks, that it would be nice to have something for freshwater lakes. But that is added to my to-do list to find some funding to get that happening. But basically, it's based, again, on the 4 Green Shores guiding principles. And the format is a little bit different because it's meant for larger scale projects. Many of the prerequisites and credits do require qualified professionals to sign off on those aspects, in contrast to Green Shores for Homes, where it's more of a self-check. It promotes greater setbacks, soft shore approaches, and riparian vegetation buffers. The credit emphasis, similar to Green Shores for Homes, look at those enhancing or restore those physical processes and habitat functions. And when we look at the prerequisites, we've got the 5 prerequisites rather than the application requirements. And these prerequisites really establish a high baseline for shoreline stewardship. So we want to look at where we site those permanent structures and encourage, as I mentioned, greater setbacks. We need to conserve we can conserve those critical or sensitive habitats. We want to have a robust riparian zone, conserve those sediment processes, so we're not going to be putting anything that makes those processes, impedes them, and then we want that environmental management plan. And those prerequisites need to have professional sign-off that those documentation is in place. Then we have 11 credit categories, or 11 credits, and then a number of different points that are applied to those. Anything, for example, on light pollution reduction, we're not going to be putting in a lot of lighting. We get some credits for innovation. We get some credits for a climate change adaptation plan. And then if you're doing, for example, enhancement in habitat, you get some points for that, as well as all those other ones. So I'll just give you an example here. Credit 1, site design with conservation of a shore zone. So again, you get that specificity. We want a minimum of 75% of the shoreline area, and then it must have an average width of 7.5 meters or greater. And how do you measure that? And then in terms of the options, you get different points for different levels of options. Obviously, 3 points for really limiting public access, so you have an area that basically is a no-go zone, and you're going to get higher points for that because it's obviously would have higher habitat value. In terms of the rating levels, it's a little bit this one's a little bit farther along, in that it's not pilot anymore. We have bronze, silver, gold. And the prerequisite is a very high baseline, and so all you need is 5, 10, or 15 points in addition to that. So you may be asking yourself, well, why should we get a project rated? And basically what we have is this third-party verification process similar to LEED or Build Green, and that really it offers compelling proof that a project has achieved the Green Shores standard and environmental goals. Having met that standard can help boost public and media interest. As a matter of fact, I got an email just a couple of weeks ago about a project in Victoria that has enrolled, and they have said they're going to be meeting the Green Shores for Coastal Development. And I got a call from the media, what's this all about? And so obviously the developer is quite interested in having a positive response from the media. It also is in alignment with a growing number of government policies and regulations in terms of moving to this standard helps governments have confidence that standards, the best practices are being met on the project, and that it can be verified by an independent third party. We may be moving towards linking to incentives in the future, so that, for example, it could be linked to if you've got a rating, then you get a rebate on the permit fee, for example, that you've paid. We're not there yet, but it's the sort of thing that may be happening in the future. And then finally, I think it really demonstrates leadership in shoreline stewardship, and particularly from a local government or a government level, demonstrating that your leaders is an important piece, particularly if you're wanting your private citizens to adopt these standards. So I did also wanted to touch base on the comparative costing, because that came up again and again. And this is from the report I mentioned earlier, Green Shores for Coastal Development. Green Shores for Enhancing Resilience. And these are really large numbers, but because there was fairly complex case examples. But what the big takeaway message here is that the soft alternative, the Green Shores approach, came in at anywhere, the difference between 30 and 70% less expensive to actually construct, which is significant. These numbers are consistent with more recent numbers. This came out from Living Shorelines in 2015. U.S. study, and looking at the cost comparison, if you look at the non-structural planting or the hybrid on that first example in Maryland, you have a range from 100 to 200, 250 to 400 in the hybrid, and looking at the structural or the hard approach, anywhere from 500 to 1200. So significantly more expensive to do the hard armoring approach. So those are two good reasons. So you're probably wondering how to get involved other than taking this webinar, because this is a great first step. Well, the really easy thing to do is you can sign up for our e-newsletters, and you can do that at greenshores.ca. I'd really encourage you to take some Green Shores training, because in a 1-hour webinar, there's no way I can do justice to the level of depth and of what is in the credit and ratings guides. So we have two levels of training in terms of to be able to utilize the guidance material. And the first is what we call the Introduction to Green Shores, Level 1. We have two workshops that are upcoming, March 3rd in Victoria and April 1st in Shawnigan Lake. Those two workshops are free thanks to our collaboration with the CRD and the CVRD as part of our Green Shores Local Government Working Group. It's free to residents. The next one is Level 2, and I would imagine most of you on this call, this would be the most appropriate level to be taking. We have a course April 26th, 27th, just outside of Seattle, and then May 29th and 30th, which is in Vancouver. And then finally, if once you have taken the Level 2 and you'd like to be on our verifier team to go out and verify projects, we have a verifier training scheduled for June 19th and 20th. It's intended for both BC and Washington verifiers, and that will be held in Padilla Bay, Washington. In terms of the cost for that, I mentioned that Level 1 are free right now. Those courses are free, and otherwise it's $205 per person. And the Level 2, the cost for that is $465 as a regular professional, and we do have a student rate for students of BCIT and UVic, our partners, at $350. And I'd like to just take a second now to just do a quick poll. So Jim, if you could pull up the poll, that would be great, to identify which, if any, of those training courses that you might be interested in attending. Okay.
And this is just to give DG an idea of interest. You're certainly not signing up by clicking on a button.
Oh, yes, yeah, absolutely. So while that poll is happening, Jim, can I move to the next slide?
You'll just have to wait.
I'll just have to wait, okay.
You can move to the next slide, but no one will see you.
Okay.
Why don't we close it off here? You can see the results there, DG. I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
Okay, all right, okay. Now, I can't see the results, but I'll just...
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Okay.
Okay.
I can tell you that the most popular here is 50% of people have interest in the Vancouver Level 2 workshop. And then after that, Level 1 in Victoria, followed by the other two Level 1 and 2 workshops.
Great. Okay. Well, good.
Share those results if you have to. Sorry, I'm not quite sure why you can't see the results.
Oh, that's okay. Well, and can everybody now see my next slide with on the shoreline there? It's a photograph.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So I just wanted to touch on what it's like to take the training, and basically we use a combination of field sort of content, overview of content, classroom-based activities, and always we go out into the field, because that's where it really pulls it together. And this slide shows our recent workshop up in Powell River with instructor Brian Emmett, and there's people sort of pointing, and we're discussing a particular site where the participants have had the opportunity to dive into an overview of what the credits are all about, and now we set them up to do some group work on a particular property to get at the conceptual level, because this was just a one-day workshop, how those credits might apply to that particular site, and we're discussing that. And we've at all the courses we do tend to get a combination of different professionals, and it really lends itself, the multidisciplinary nature of Green Shores and the people who attend the workshops really adds a lot. So if you're coming at it from a planning perspective, or from a biological perspective, or from an engineering perspective, it all can be discussed, and the designs that the students come up with are really really enhanced by that multidisciplinary aspect. So getting out, walking the shore, using real life scenarios is a very critical part of it. And in the Level 2 training, one of the things we do is we do a credit screening. So we give you documentation, and then you can actually really work with the credits and understand fully what they're all about. So in terms of registering for those courses that are workshops that are coming up, the easiest way is just to go to Continuing Studies and search for Green Shores. Now, I did get a call from the registrar at UVic saying that they're having a little bit of difficulty with the Level 2 registration, so it won't be up until tomorrow. So you can't, if you go there today, it'll say there are currently no courses, but if you go there tomorrow, it should be up. In terms of Washington State courses, you need to get in touch with Nicole Fagan, and that's her email address there. And if you don't have time to write it down right now, I work with Nicole quite a bit, and you can always contact me afterwards. Other than taking training, Jim has already mentioned the tools webinar on March 7th. We're really encouraging people to share the Green Shores websites. So we've got two that are linked. You can go to greenshores.ca and greenshoresforhomes.org. Both of them have some great videos that really explain about what Green Shores is all about and how it can be applied. So encourage you to check out the resources there. There's a great resources page on both those websites. Another thing you can do is really encourage use of those Green Shores credit and ratings guides. So actually, once you've taken the training, you're going to have more confidence in utilizing the guides, but we've got some great guidance material out there. Let's use it in projects. The next thing is actually we need more examples of Green Shores projects that have actually achieved the rating as demonstration sites. So consider enrolling projects. Right now, because we have some grant funding, we have ability to support the enrollment fees for Green Shores for Homes are waived right now. So that's terrific, and we have some support for verifying those, the Green Shores for Homes sites. And we're working towards making the enrollment and verification fees for all other projects as reasonable as possible so that we can get as many out there, and then we can highlight them on our website. And then finally, consider, if you're working with local government, joining our local government working group. We're really hearing very positive feedback about the help that being part of a working group can provide. So we, through the Green Shores program, can support communities through delivery of education, resources, and then ongoing training and support for the communities that we're working with. So I wanted to end by just thanking you very much for participating. We really value your interest in Green Shores, and also want to mention that we could not have developed the program as far along as we have without support from our funders, including Natural Resources Canada, the Real Estate Foundation, the Sitka Foundation, Archipelago Marine Research, University of Victoria, soon BCIT, as well as Washington Sea Grant. And on that note, I'd like to just open it up for some questions. And if anybody has any specific questions for Johanna, her contact information is there, or I'd be pleased to pass along specific questions or do my best to answer that aspect in terms of the climate change and adaptation aspect of this presentation. So I guess we'll open it up. Jim?
Yes, that's great. Thanks very much for the great presentation, DG. You covered a lot in a short time. We have our first question is from Jennifer. Is it possible to get a Green Shore certification retroactively for a project that's already been completed if the project has been well documented?
Quick answer, yes, it is possible. It is harder to do because it is, you may or may not have the documentation, but we did complete a retroactive rating of a project. Actually, the Jericho Beach project in the city of Vancouver, we did that retroactively. So yes, it is possible.
Okay, great. Another question would be, you mentioned the network, local governments that folks can join. How do they join that network?
Basically, you get in touch with me, and I can send you the information about what the benefits and the cost are for that. And we are looking at having additional local governments join our group for the 2017, 2018, and 2018, 2019 year. So in terms of planning ahead. And there was one other thing I was going to say about that, but it just escaped me. I can circle back, but basically, just get in touch with me, and then we can go over the costs and benefits for that.
Okay. Another question here is: have many stream shoreline properties been reviewed under this program, or have any, I guess?
Okay, so that's a great question, and it's come up. Well, they've all been good questions, but come up quite a bit. Green Shores is not actually applicable to streams, rivers and streams at present. There is quite a bit of interest in having that addition, a credit and ratings guide for rivers and streams, but we do not have that developed yet. It is on our radar, and we will be actively looking for some funding to develop that in the future, but we do not have that at present.
Okay, so stay tuned.
Yeah.
Do you, I guess, or do communities require provincial approval or permits to do this type of work in the foreshore area?
It really depends on what the project is. If you are working in the foreshore, then yes, permitting is required. So any works below the natural boundary, generally, or the foreshore, a permit is required. And one of the things that we have on our radar is to work with FLNRO, the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations, and Front Counter BC to have Green Shores projects be considered, and have a positive consideration rather than putting in hard armoring. But that's one of those streamlined processes. We're not quite there yet, but it's certainly on our radar. So right now, you do have to get regular permitting, just like any other project.
Okay, so you mentioned the provincial permitting. Another person is asking about how does DFO view the Green Shores program in regards to their approval process?
It is similar in the sense that there's no special attributes from an official policy basis, but I am really pleased to be able to report that next week I will be presenting to the at a DFO meeting, and I'm really hopeful that we'll start to move ahead from a DFO perspective once they understand a little bit more about what Green Shores is all about.
Okay. Question from Charlotte is, how does a property owner who can test whether a solution is viable for a steep shore situation in the CVRD area?
Right. So basically, what we have, if we have professionals who take the level 2 training, what we're moving towards is a professional, approved professional designation. As you can tell, the program is evolving, and we just started the training in 2015. So we're just over a year of having the training available. But what we have now is a registry of professionals who have taken the level 2 training, and eventually we'll have an exam and a list of approved professionals, but we have that. So those people are part of our registry, and if people are interested in finding out who has taken the training in their area, they can get in touch with me, and I can forward to them a list of trained professionals.
Okay, great. Just a clarification question around the streams not being considered right now. It says, to clarify, lakes are only applicable at this time. I guess what you're saying is it's only applicable to the marine environment, not to freshwater of any kind. Is that right, DG?
Not quite. So Green Shores for Homes is applicable to lake environments as well as marine. So lake shorelines and marine shorelines. Green Shores for Coastal Development for the larger scale projects, parks, institutions, mixed-use residential, light industrial. That is only for marine shorelines at present.
Okay, gotcha. Another question from Brad is, has there been any discussion with the Crown Lands Branch and local governments to allow for Green Shore projects to be completed below the subject property on Crown land? This is a big issue, for example, in the Parksville-Qualicum area.
To my knowledge, we haven't made any, there hasn't been any discussions in that area, but if it's certainly of concern, we can explore that, but no, not at present.
Okay, great. And another question is the Fraser River, given its title to Mission BC, a consideration under the Green Shores program?
So again, that would be rivers, and so no, not in river systems, but obviously in the estuary, at the delta at the outlet, that was where it could be applicable.
Yeah, I was just also going to mention too that kind of a related system might be worth looking at for inland areas is the Salmon Safe program, which Fraser Basin Council is also involved in. So for those that have been asking about that, we can certainly include a link to that program, which is not just for foreshore properties, but would be worth looking at as another option. There's a question around whether the slides are available today, and certainly we will have, what we normally do is provide a recording of this webinar, which will be linked to our website, the retooling.ca website, in the near future, in the next week or two. Another question here is, does the Coastal Development Program apply for deltas and estuaries that are tidally influenced? So you just talked about this, DG, but I'm assuming yes?
Yes, yes.
Is the answer? Okay, great. Well, I think that might be the last question we have here. Any last questions folks have for DG in our last minute or so? Well, if not, just bear with me for a moment here. I'd just like to thank DG for her great presentation, and for all of you for participating and for the excellent questions afterwards. If you have any other follow-up questions, you're also welcome to follow up with me, with Jim Vanderwall. My contact information is there, as well as my colleague Elena Chia. We're both at Fraser Basin Council. Thanks again for your participation. As I mentioned just a moment ago, there will be a recording of the webinar available afterwards, linked to our website. And we encourage you to take a look at it if you have other questions, or forward it on to others in your organization. So thanks everyone, and thanks DG, and hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.